13.
Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbiter over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God.'"
You may be seated. First of all, I want to thank all of you for praying for our youngest granddaughter. We have 5 granddaughters and 5 grandsons, and our 7-year-old Emerson this week was diagnosed with pneumonia. He was in the hospital, and on Sunday afternoon we took off and went down to Modesto, take care of the rest of the family while Mom and Dad were at the hospital with their little one. She responded wonderfully well, and by Thursday, she was wrestling with me at home. She was so happy, and we were happy for her. We also had a chance that afternoon to watch our her older sister, Darby, play in tennis match, and she's a sophomore playing on the varsity team, and I love it. She's improving all the time. We had a great time. Well, our routines are upset in September. There are all kinds of crazy things that have happened to us. We've gone to, my sister's funeral is going to be in San Diego on the 22nd. She went to be with the Lord a few weeks ago. She was suffering from Alzheimer's. And that same week, by the way, we planned to go to Kansas City. We had already tickets to Kansas City to watch our other grandchildren play, one playing football, the other, our granddaughter playing volleyball. And so it's back-to-back flights, and it's crazy. It's really crazy. And then we had another funeral in Rancho Cordova, my old church, and one of the founders, Ruth, turned 100 years old, and of course we had to go to that funeral. And it was reminiscing of all the wonderful days we had there and some of the hard places we had to go through too. You know, I think of some of the stretchings that I did in my own faith and the grace of God. I remember in a different church an occasion when this man stopped me before the service, and he said to me, "I have a bone to pick with you." "Well, you want to tell me?" "No, I'll tell you after the service." That's great. You know, I mean, the entire service I'm thinking, what did I do? What did I do? Excuse me. And so after the service, I went up to him and I said, "Okay," I pulled him aside and said, what's the bone you're picking with me? And he said, "You're not going to like it." "Tell me." "The organ's too loud." "That's it?" It's hurting my hearing. And I thought, you know, I can take care of that. Isn't it amazing how we get all uptight about trivia? I remember one person saying to me, "That person's parking in my parking lot. I know they're doing it on purpose." I said, "How do you know that?" Well, I just know, you're upset in church because of a parking place or where you sit in the church, or you changed around the color of I remember one person was so excited because the new carpet was an orange, and the pews were a light blue, and it looked beautiful. And she came in and so excited and so upset. She said, "This is all wrong." "What do you mean it's all wrong?" She said, "The carpet has to be blue and the chairs have to be the other color." And I went, "What in the world is that about?" We get all upset about these trivia things. Again and again, I think of that, and this is what this is about in this passage. Trivia. Things that really don't matter. Parking space, color of a room, carpet. Someone was excited and really angry at me because I was at one time growing a beard. Nancy liked it, and I'm glad of that. And she said, "I don't like that beard. Cut it off." And I said, Nancy said, "I like it. It stays on." I thought that was encouraging. We get so upset about trivia compared to things of eternity. And that's what this passage is about. Jesus, in his last weeks of his ministry, he doesn't have much time left, but at this occasion he decides he's going to go to a Pharisee's house to have a meal with him. And the conversation in the dining room suddenly is hushed, for Jesus is eating something without washing his hands. The ceremonial washing of his hands. The host stares in disbelief. Jesus sees his reactions and the Pharisee, and he can't keep quiet. And in a spirit of absolute truth, Jesus blasts them for their attitudes and unjust actions. And then the scribes join in. It's a big scene. Remember, it's like someone yelling, "Fight, fight," in high school, and everybody has to see what's going on. The word, "whoa, whoa, whoa," is that same word of fight. What's going on? And hundreds of people are coming around. Interesting, with this huge crowd, Jesus warns about the problem here to the Pharisees. It's a teaching moment for the disciples. He doesn't talk to the crowd at this point, but he talks to the disciples, and he warns them about the hypocrisy, the yeast of hypocrisy, the little white lies, saying you're a believer and you're not. And then he assures them that as you follow me, you're going to have problems, but remember that I am with you always. I am part of you. I know everything about you. I care for the small birds. I can care for you. I know the number of the hairs on your head, how many fell out this morning when the brush. I know everything intimately about you, and I will care for you even to the point when you're going before the Sanhedrin and the councils and everybody else, and God's going to give them the right words to say. Now, he turns to the crowd. People are lined up all over the place, wanting to listen. And before he gets a word out, this one guy can't wait. And he says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide his inheritance with me." I can imagine Jesus has these important things to say, and this guy's going, "What? You want me to talk about how it is what fairness is? We don't know anything about the situation. Apparently, Dad's died, and the oldest said he's the oldest son. He's younger. What's happening? Does this man want the equal amount that his brother gets? Because that's not what the law said. The oldest son gets twice what everybody else gets. So if everybody got $100, you got $200. The idea is we don't know what the situation is. And Jesus doesn't even bother with us. And he kind of says, "Why are you bothering with this kind of thing? That's all about stuff. Greed. First thing happens is greed. Now you have to understand also that he's just dealt with the Pharisees. In order to be a Pharisee, you have to have money. Because if you have money, then God has blessed your life. If you don't have money, God's not blessing you, which is not true. Some of us are naturally poor. We know how to be poor. We know how to live in poorness. But riches, greed. A commentary said this: greed seeks more, and here it is possessions. It's a kind of greed that is not to be equated with true living. In fact, wanting more things becomes a substitute for the proper object of man's search and worship of God, and therefore greed becomes idolatry. And he turns to the crowd. Jesus turns to the crowd and he says, watch out, be on your guard for all kinds of greed. Well, here, obviously, I thought to myself, all kinds of greed? What are all kinds of greed? Let me help you understand some things. Here it's talking about money. I want more. I want more. What's the answer of more? 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 When do you have enough? More? And with greed of money comes a greed for power or prestige. And of course, the Pharisees want the prestige of walking into the marketplace and say, oh, Rabbi, oh, Rabbi. They want the best seats in the house. They want to influence the other people. Look at us. Don't touch me, I have special garbs. Don't touch me, I'm special, I'm above you. Greed, cheating. And the Pharisees were cheating their parents. They were cheating and pretending to do things right, but deep down they're rotten. All this kind of stuff. Oh, it happens in our country too. You know, somebody gives some candidate so much money and they hope to get an ambassadorship. Greed. So money, greed, here it is, position, greed. And I thought to myself, there's another area, greed, spiritual. What? Spiritual greed? Spiritual positions. Used to be back in the many years ago, there's a thing called simony. You know what simony is? It's when you buy your church office. Now, I'm not talking about my office. Talking about being a bishop. I'll give the archbishop so much money, and I'll get this honor. So you buy the office. Well, here was the Pharisees getting all this money, this prestige, and thinking they have power spiritually. I have to commit, I'll confess to you, when I was a young man, I thought being our term was district superintendent, bishop would be a better term. I thought it'd be really cool to be a bishop. Then I got into leadership in the district, and I went, how come I'd want another hole in my head? To be a bishop, all those problems, all that weight of responsibility, I don't want that. Never get a break, being on attention all the time, that was stupid. If God puts me in that situation, that's up to Him, and He'll give me the grace to do it. But in the meantime, I am not going to seek that. Now, it was nice to be honored at times, to be thought about being the next bishop, and I thought, nah, I don't want that. I don't want that. It was always that attitude of, look at me. Look how important I am. Be on guard against all kinds of greed. And Jesus makes this point. A man's life, when it comes to finances, a man's life does not consist in the abundance of things that he has. And to bring this point home, Jesus tells the crowd this parable. It is a parable that has most of the words of you, of me, myself, and I. There's no other parable that has so many of the personal pronoun. It was said that a self-centered lady named Edith, that Edith lived in a little world bound on the south and the east, the north and the west by Edith. Her whole world was about herself. Now, a certain rich man produced a good crop. He did. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop, not the man. But he thought to himself, I'm in charge. I'm in charge. The rich man had little to do with the ground. He had little to do with the rain coming at the right time. But again, this story is all about himself. Now, remember that Jesus is saying this in hearing of the Pharisees who are over there. So right away, this rich guy thinks he's in charge of his life. So he decides to tear down his barns to make way for bigger barns. And again, he's depending on himself. I will keep having an abundance of crops this year and next year and next year, because the rains are going to come at the right time, and the good ground is going to continue to be right, and the bugs will stay out of it, and the locusts won't eat it, and the hail won't flatten it, because I'm in charge. Really? That's why God said, and then he says, by the way, he continues, he says, and at the end I'll sit back and I'll eat, drink, and be merry. He doesn't finish the other part, and then we die. I'll have everything I want. I'll build bigger barns because it's about me. And God said to him, and God can be used here in this parable, because it is a story, and God says to him, fool. And the word is aprion, which is in the Greek, which is not used lightly. In the Old Testament, it's a sense of one who rejects knowledge and precepts of God for his base of life. Greed doesn't work. Tonight, you're going to have a stroke or a heart attack. And then who's going to get your money and your stuff? Billy Graham used to quote another evangelist named Billy Sunday, and he said, you never saw a hearse pulling a U-Haul. You never do. The point is clear. If you're not going to take anything with you when you die, you're going to leave it all behind. It's just stuff. Now, I want to tell you, I know that. And so I've been doing some research and following a little book that we have about what happens about your preparing for your death. And so I've been listing out where all of our wills are, and for Nancy, because if I go before she does, she needs to know all the passwords, where to find them. She needs to know where all the bank accounts and the automatic payments are going out of our checking account, and where to sell my trains, insurance, all those details, where the pink slips are, all that kind of thing. I do that because I'm not taking trivia with me. What I am taking with me to heaven is all the love of Jesus Christ I can share, and all the love for you, and all the good and helpful things I've done for people in the name of Jesus Christ. It's my life rich towards God. And that last verse, This is how it will be with anyone who stores up for things for himself, but is not rich towards God. Now, he's not talking about putting your money in the church. That's not it. It's about your love and your care for other people, your grace that God has given to you to give to others. As I said in my prayer, I had a young man who came to me a couple of weeks ago, and he was complaining that he's never found a perfect church. I wanted to say, don't go to one because you'll spoil it. But he said, I've never found, they're always disappointing me. I said, are you looking to people or are you looking to God? Are you giving grace? It's all about grace. Everything's about grace. Giving grace to those who offend you. Giving grace to even those who would murder somebody. Yeah, we're disappointed, but we give grace. Grace. They don't deserve it. You don't deserve it. But God has given it to you, and we are to give it to others. Now, when somebody chews me out, I'd get upset. You do too. But after a while, what filters through is God's grace. Grace upon grace upon grace. I think our prayer has to be, Lord, help us to live with such, in being so rich towards you and towards others, that we'll realize the greatness of life and that we have really lived our life well because of your grace flowing from us. May that be your prayer this morning. Would you pray with me, please? Lord, I thank you that we can forget the trivia. Doesn't really make sense. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, it does. It doesn't. Lord, I pray that you would help us to live in the grace, abounding in grace, again and again towards others, to those who would hurt us, to those who would say and upset us with trivia things. Lord, may we be grace givers. And I pray, Lord, that the grace and the love of Christ might flow through us. And right now, would you just pray for those who you need to show grace to? Just before the Lord, mention their name before him. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.